Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is VitruvianPhysique. Thank you for stopping by for what, as I'm sure many of you have already noticed, is kind of a weird format to the video. Like, what's with this up and down kind of vertical thing? I mean, aren't I usually like that? Does that feel a little bit more familiar? Today, I want to try out something a little bit new. We're going to be doing this less of like a vlog and more of like an actual informational video, doing a little bit almost like a split screen side-by-side analysis. Pretty much by the end of this, you will have a very good understanding of what a typical day of bulking for me looks like. We first need to establish essentially the foundation, the groundwork for what my diet is actually based off, and there are three things that I look at. Number one is protein intake. My current goal is 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I know that a lot of people are they're gonna say like, oh, but Igor, this one study out of 1,000 said that you should go higher towards 1 or 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And some of the vegans out there who can't get as much protein, they're a little bit more towards the opposite side of the spectrum. They're gonna say like, oh, Igor, but I know this one bodybuilder who eats like 0.6 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and he looks fine. In fact, he looks better than you. And it's like this spectrum, it's exactly as it is. It's a spectrum. There's so many different pieces of scientific evidence or anecdotal evidence of high protein intakes, low protein intakes. There is no one magic number. I wish there was. Trust me, I have looked. It doesn't exist. But based on the majority of the evidence that I have seen and my personal experience, 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight when you are bulking is more than enough. And for me at 200 pounds, that comes out to 160. That's pretty much my ceiling. I try to get, not my ceiling, my floor. I try to get at least 160 at minimum, and then my ceiling is usually 200. Could I go more than that? Yeah, but to be honest, I just don't want to. I'm not a huge fan of sitting there shoveling down chicken breast. All right, factor number 2, calories, and specifically calorie surplus. Usually I'm aiming between 300 to 500 calorie surplus. It's more of a range. This is above what you would consider a lean bulk, but it's definitely significantly below what would be considered a dirty bulk. It's kind of like in between those two, a regular bulk, something which I try to aim for. I believe nobody out there should be doing a dirty bulk because honestly, I think the marginal benefit to increase calories beyond something like a 500 calorie surplus is just not worth it. And finally, the third thing that I look at, servings of fruits and vegetables. And my current target is 6 at minimum. Ideally, if I can go for 8, 9, 10, 300, I don't care. That would be great. But 6 is an absolute. It's the floor. That's like the minimum. Also, for those of you wondering where I actually got this number from, they actually have done studies. In particular, there's one meta-analysis where they actually looked at the correlation between fruits and vegetable intake and all causes of mortality, especially diseases, primarily cardiovascular disease. And they actually found a dose-dependent inverse relationship between likelihood of mortality or death and fruit and vegetable intake. So, you know that thing that your parents always told you, like, Billy, you gotta eat your vegetables? It's like, oh, holy shit, they're actually right. Also guys, before we get into the food, the good stuff, I just want to let you know that my overall nutrition strategy is documented in my course, The Skinny Fat Solution. I launched it a few months ago, and based on the feedback I've been hearing from you guys, out of everything I've ever made, this is definitely what I'm most proud of. For the first time since its launch, I'm going to be putting it on sale at 30% off, but only for the next 72 hours. It's a bundle, so you're going to get an online course, a physical book, 2 downloadable Excel tools, and exclusive videos from me that you're not going to get anywhere else. Plus I have a 15-day, 100% no questions asked money back guarantee, so you can get it completely risk-free. But that's enough of that, let's get into the good stuff. Okay, first meal of the day. For my main protein source, I'm eating eggs. And yes, I know, very creative. But there are a couple reasons why I really do think it's an amazing protein source, and I'll get into those in a minute. Usually what I do is I go with 1 whole egg and then 4 egg whites. Now, I know that this can open up a can of worms with regards to the never-ending debate as to whether or not eggs are bad for you or not. Like, people on one side, usually the vegans, let's be honest, are saying that eggs are absolutely poison and they're gonna kill you, and the cholesterol is super high and it's directly, related to cardiovascular disease. And then people on the other side of the spectrum are saying, no, it's fine. It's kind of an over-exaggeration. And although the cholesterol content is somewhat high in eggs, it's mostly the good kind of cholesterol, that's HDL, not LDL. And honestly, to cover this topic entirely, I think I would need like a full separate 30-minute video. So in the meantime, guys, just understand that although I am using eggs as my main protein source, 80% of it, 4 out of 5, is just egg whites. Also, eggs, like beyond any debate, are literally one of the best protein sources on the planet. If you actually look at the PDCAAS score, and yes, that is a mouthful. This scoring system is a measurement of protein quality in terms of amino acid profile and digestibility. Eggs are at the very top of the list above every single other protein source, aside from supplements like whey and soy protein isolate, which come in tied for first place. Next up is more super creative breakfast ideas. I am doing oatmeal, but it may be a little creative in terms of how I actually prepare it, so guys, pay attention. What I'm actually doing is combining two kinds of oatmeal, two different kinds of oatmeal together. I'm using one of those Quaker instant oatmeals. You know, like those instant kind of quick packets, you kind of just add like a little bit of boiling water and it's done, or you stick it in the microwave for 60 seconds. My go-to is peaches and cream flavor. That's my personal favorite. But what I'm actually doing is combining it with some raw, quote unquote, healthier, basic unprocessed large flake oats. This way, the kind of flavor from the peaches and cream instant oatmeal kind of mixes in with the whole thing, and then it all ends up tasting fantastic, despite the fact that the actual sugar content isn't that high. And also these days, I'm really trying to focus on eating a diet which, although it's high in carbohydrates, it's mostly coming from healthier sources with less added processed, refined sugars. And then to further increase my carb intake even more, because #bulk life, I'm adding in about a handful of raisins. In this case, it comes out to around 40 grams. And then on the side, for a beverage, these days I'm actually doing coconut water as opposed to regular basic water. It tastes so good. It's so refreshing. It's just slightly sweet. And on top of it, it adds an additional 10 to 15 grams of natural carbohydrates, 60 to 70 calories. And then finally, the last piece of my breakfast, I just usually have a banana on the side, just to add at least one serving of fruits or vegetables. Overall, my final count for my meal, this comes out to approximately 31 grams of protein, which isn't too high, but it's a very nice light meal, which I prefer this over like a really big, massive, heavy meal, because that's going to put me into a food coma, that's going to slow me down, and in the mornings when I'm working out, I'm being really productive with business stuff, that's the last thing I need. And overall, this is around 760 to be specific, calories with 1 or 2 servings of fruits and vegetables. Pretty damn good breakfast. Obviously, due to flexible dieting, I might sub foods in and out, but for the most part, guys, what you were seeing, these are my absolute breakfast staples on a daily basis. Alright, second meal of the day. This one was around 2 p.m. and was immediately after my workout, serving as my post-workout meal. Here the name of the game is speed and convenience, and I'm happy to say that although this meal is fairly basic, it's also super easy and relatively inexpensive to prepare. My main carb source is one of these microwavable Uncle Ben's Express rice bags, which I'm absolutely loving right now because it costs like $3. It gives you a massive amount, which is probably enough for 2 servings or one really big one if you're trying to pack on the calories like me. And most importantly, it tastes friggin' great, which is so crucial when bulking. Trust me, I've been that guy, eating plain white rice with a dribble of soy sauce out of a sad little Tupperware container in the corner of the room while everyone else enjoys the house party and you promise you try to have a good time, but you can't because the music is too loud and you gotta get your calories in, and there's a guy here with bigger calves than me and it's not my fault because I train them so hard and I tried high volume, but it still isn't working, and now your legs look like chicken legs, and goddammit, piece of shit, stupid ass calf raised my ass, what the For my vegetable source, I usually have a full avocado, as it's a fantastic way to get a ton of super healthy polyunsaturated fats. Plus, it's surprisingly high in fiber, and if big enough, it actually counts as 2 full servings of vegetables. And finally, the main protein source I usually go for is chicken breast, which I gotta admit, it does sound a bit boring and cliche, the usual bodybuilding trope, but I've actually found a way to make it taste pretty damn good using just a few seasonings, which I found at my local Walmart for, honestly, I think it was like $3, maybe $4 each. However, sometimes when I do get bored of chicken, again guys, flexible dieting, you can sub foods in and out. As long as they generally, conform to your calorie and macronutrient targets, it's totally okay. Sometimes I switch to steak. Specifically, it's a cut called Eye of Round, which I've personally found to be pretty high in terms of its protein to fat ratio, which is something I look for when consuming red meat. And on the side, I usually have a few servings of ketchup because, like I said, palate of a 9-year-old. All of this comes out to a whopping 68 grams of protein, 960 calories, again that rice really does help, and 1 to 2 servings of vegetables. These days for my snacks, I personally have been loving berries as they're an easy way to get around 20 to 30 grams of natural carbohydrates, and they really help crush that sweet tooth, that sweet craving you get. That way I don't end up eating candy or chocolate or other bullshit like that. Here I'm going with half a container of blackberries and golden berries, and I've actually never seen these or even knew what they existed. Like, what the hell is golden berries? I've never heard of these up until around a year ago when my local grocery store started selling them, and I mean, I am absolutely falling in love with them. They taste kind of like blueberries except a little bit more sour. Again, these days I really am trying to the best of my ability to avoid processed added sugars, not due to any reasons related to fitness, since from a flexible dieting standpoint, a carb is a carb, regardless of the source, whether it came from oatmeal or straight up sugar found in Coca-Cola. However, from a more health-related standpoint, there are a multitude of reasons to avoid processed sugar. One such example, although there are many, is a likely correlation between sugar and acne breakouts. And me being someone who's had problematic skin pretty much my entire life, yeah, this is definitely a big priority for me. So these days, to the best of my ability, I do try to gravitate a bit more towards more natural sugar, natural dessert options. Overall, this snack comes out to a massive 3 grams of protein, which I know is tiny, but that's okay. That's not the goal for this specific meal. 90 calories and 2 full servings of fruit/vegetables. For this one, I actually want to show you guys 2 different meal options representing the opposite sides of the spectrum with regards to cost. So option number 1, this one is a little bit on the cheap side of the spectrum because this whole meal I'm about to show you can be made for like, what, 10, 12 bucks worth of ingredients, and it easily makes 2 relatively large servings. This is a homemade chicken and potato, I don't know if you want to call it a stew or a slow cooked pot, I don't know what the name of it is, but it tastes pretty damn good and it's also relatively clean. In this case, I'm using a slow cooker, and this is one of my favorite ways to cook. I highly recommend it. If you don't have one of these, you consider picking one up because they're super cheap. I think it's like $30 or $40, and it makes your life so much simpler. The recipe is as follows. First of all, I start off with a few potatoes. Usually I go for something like maybe 3 large ones or 4 to 5 medium ones. You can use sweet potatoes, and I cut these up into quarters. Then for the vegetables, you can use honestly whatever you want. In my case, I'm using baby carrots, green beans, and then I finish it off with some sliced white onions. Then for my protein source, I'm going with chicken. You could probably use steak or maybe something like pork loin or turkey. That all of this works. Usually I go for 3 to 4 chicken breasts depending on size. In my case, as you guys are seeing here, I'm going with 3 as they're relatively big. And then I add 1 cup of chicken broth. I'm using the organic fancy kind because #health. And then to top it all off, you guys can add whatever sauces or spices you'd like. In my case, because I do like it a little sweet, I'm actually going with 3 tablespoons worth of honey. Also, pro tip, if you're using the raw honey like me, the one that's kind of hard and waxy, you can stick it in the microwave for about 15 to 20 seconds to liquefy it, and this makes it a lot easier to kind of add in and pour all over your chicken. And guys, that is it. Just throw it all into the slow cooker, turn it on high for 3 to 4 hours, or low for about 6 to 7 hours. I personally like to turn it on in the afternoon, and then a few hours later it's ready for me in the evening when I have dinner. But I also know a lot of people who prepare it in the morning and then they leave it on low while they're away at work throughout the day. That way when they get home from work, they have a hot and delicious meal waiting for them the second they walk through the door. Now obviously the calories and macros are going to differ depending on which ingredients you select, but the way you guys saw me prepare it in this video, this results in a massive 125 grams of protein, 1140 calories, and a pretty damn big 8 servings of vegetables. Now in my case, I split this with my girlfriend because I can't eat this all myself. I wish I could, but I probably still ate the majority. I'd say like 60%, so my actual macros and calories look like this. Next up, option number 2, Chipotle. And yes, I know, this is super cliche and probably the standard meal for like 50% of the YouTube fitness community, but guys, there is a good reason for that. First of all, although it's a bit pricier compared to option number 1, at almost 3 times the cost on a dollars per serving basis, this meal is awesome because it obviously has 0 preparation time, and because it's a relatively clean way to get 800 plus calories, as opposed to simply stuffing your face with McDonald's or some other crap. My usual go-to is a chicken bowl with guac, no cheese, and then pretty much all the veggie toppings I can possibly get my hands on. Overall, this comes out to 47 grams of protein, 800 calories, and approximately 2 to 3 servings of vegetables depending on which toppings you select. And finally guys, my last meal of the day. This is a high protein peanut butter and jam bagel sandwich, which is an awesome way to get one last, little boost to my protein intake, as well as crush my late night sweet tooth. I start off with a P28 protein bagel, and no, this video is not sponsored by them in any way. I just found these at my local grocery store, and since just one of these has 28 grams of protein, I figured it would be a pretty good way to help just, give a little bit of a top off to my protein intake without having to scarf down more meat. In this case, I am just using half the bagel, not in fear of getting like too many calories or too much protein or anything. I just honestly don't like the taste of all that bread. Then I top it off with 2 tablespoons of whipped peanut butter and 2 tablespoons of no sugar added raspberry jam. By the way, this jam, it's a lifesaver when dieting, since it tastes so good on bagels or toast or just about anything when you're craving something sweet, but it's only about 20 calories per spoonful, so you can just layer it on, whatever you're eating, and it's like 50 calories at most. When I'm bulking, it's great. When I'm dieting, it's even better. I definitely do recommend it. And then finally on the side, I will have about 1.5 cups of vanilla flavored almond milk. So the final calorie and macro counts are as follows. Following dinner option number 1, we have 205 grams of protein, 399 carbs, and 63 grams of fat, totaling 2,935 calories. Now, I do want to mention that in all honesty, this is a bit more of a clean day of eating for me than I normally do, since these days I usually do eat out at least 1 meal per day. This is actually a big reason why I ended up with such a high fiber and protein intake and then a relatively low fat intake. Option number 2, moving on, this is a little bit more of a standard day of eating for me. We have 171 grams of protein, 376 carbs, and 94 grams of fat, totaling just over 3,000 calories. So guys, that is it. That is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, because legit it took like 2 weeks to finish. This one, this video is definitely a bit more of a project than my normal full day of eating videos are, so if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go pass out for a while. Again, my course, The Skinny Fat Solution, is on sale right now, but for 3 days only, and on that note, I'll see you guys in the next video.